Welcome back, everybody, to the Transfer Portal presented by No Context. I got my boy Andrew here. We got big news. Big 12 schedule finally got released. It seems like it took forever. Andrew, how you doing?
Doing good. I don't know why, but it feels like the Big 12 was literally the last it was literally the last conference to release their schedule. So I'm just glad that we finally got it, and I'm excited to talk about it because these next 2 years are going to be big in the Big 12.
Yeah, so let me be the first person to welcome you to the Big 12, the big time.
I mean, I mean, you essentially are a dual citizen now in the Big
I
12.
am.
It's you're. I think you and I both know, for those that have been around the university of one of the four schools that are going into it, it was a matter of when, not if. I think we kind of knew this for a good amount of years, but at the same time, it's kind of like, we're bringing in three other guys that we really wouldn't expect to be in this conference like 2 to 3 years ago. But listen, we got four new teams. We got two teams that are enjoying their last two, maybe one more year before they head off to their next conference. So I'm excited. This is going to be a big conference for the next 2 years, and I think it can even be really telling of what kind of conference it's going to be as 2023 and 2024 roll around.
Yeah, I don't think we were talking about it. Do you think that they got the right four teams in?
Yeah, it's. I think in terms of quality of programs, I think they got it right. I think there are some teams you look at and you kind of think to yourself, when you think of Big 12, you think of, all the Texas schools, you think of the Oklahoma schools, you think of Kansas, you essentially think of, you know, that type of culture. And then you start seeing Central Florida come in, then you see Cincinnati that you would associate more with a Big 10 culture than you would with a Big 12. UCF, I mean, you probably think that they'd probably be better in the ACC. BYU hasn't been in a conference since they left the Mountain West about 10 years ago. Pac-12 would have seemed been more what they got, but I feel like territory is meaningless now these days in the college football landscape. I mean, you got two Southern Cali teams going to the Big Ten. I don't consider Oklahoma or Austin, Texas to be Southeast United States, but that's where they're going to be heading in 2 years. So, I look at some other schools like Memphis, maybe SMU, some of these other schools that have had pretty good success over the last 5 years, and it kind of makes you wonder how come they didn't get the call. But in terms of what these four programs have accomplished over the last couple of years, specifically Cincinnati, uh, Houston, UCF, they made a New Year's Six Bowl. Houston's made New Year's Six Bowl. Cincinnati's made two of the last three seasons have made a New Year's Six Bowl. BYU is an interesting one because there's always been like some religious affiliation that's like back teams away. I think that's why they could never get in the Pac-12. But they're still a very good quality team. They've never been better than a 9-3. They've never really made a New Year's Six, but it's going to be interesting to see how these four really good teams fit into finally a Power Five conference.
Yeah, I think I'm interested to see how recruiting is going to change for them, especially for Houston because they're in Texas. We know Texas is a hotbed for recruiting. They have that name next to them. They're going to get the Big 12 contract, the TV contracts, the attention for winning a conference, a Power Five conference. BYU, it's kind of the same thing. They're in that region. They're competing with USC, UCLA, Oregon. How do you think recruiting is going to be affected?
So it's funny you mentioned Houston in terms of the recruiting because the first name that came to my mind was Matthew Golden, who is essentially going to be Houston's number one receiver next year with Tank Dell now going to the NFL. Matthew Golden, before he came to Houston, was a TCU commit. And I actually remember watching him the season opener in 2021 when he was at Klein Kane and he was playing Bridgeland. And he's a good player, really. And I thought even then I knew he was a really good player. But it's really telling you that there are players that are, decommitting from Power Five teams that were already Power Five programs, and now they're going to who were then G5, now in the Power Five. Houston, a good bulk of that Texas A&M 2022 class came from the Houston area. Harold Perkins, who's now tearing it up at LSU, he came from Houston. But this kind of makes you wonder, like, how does this work with NIL? I feel like us that watch the screens and go to the games, we truly don't have a grasp of what NIL really works. But it makes you wonder, like, Houston being the metropolitan city that it is, the amount of businesses that come here, even Texas, with Austin essentially becoming Silicon Valley East, to an extent. It kind of really makes you wonder what money is happening. Some of these other cities, like, I hate to be this guy, but like, I've been to Cincinnati. Okay, it's not anywhere near a commercial hotbed as a Houston is. Hey, you got UCF over there in Orlando. I mean, is Disney going to make NIL deals with players to come to UCF? You just never know on how this is going to shape up. But I think recruiting, Florida, we didn't even talk about Florida. Florida is always one of those top 4 states that always bring in some of the best recruits in the country. I think you're looking at programs like Oklahoma State, maybe a Kansas State, maybe Kansas, these programs that are not necessarily in the biggest of areas, if that makes sense. How would you rather go to Houston or to Orlando, play for those schools rather than essentially be stuck in middle America and still competing for the same prize?
Yeah, I like the way you put that. I never like living in a big city for a while. It was kind of a hindrance, right? It's not a college town.
People
That's
will
kind of
argue
what
that's
people
what
were
held
saying.
Houston back for so many
Yeah,
years now.
exactly. But now, like, because of NIL, there's just so many more opportunities in a bigger city. If you play well, you succeed, you're popular. I mean, they give you the key to the city at some point, So that is, it's going to be interesting to see how those. I think obviously like the Texas A&M, they'll be fine, right?
Yeah, they'll be
But
fine.
those
Texas,
those smaller
Texas is
schools like
always going to
Kansas
get those
State.
big name recruits. I think
Mm,
your 5 stars are still going to go to Oklahoma. They're still going to go to Texas.
yeah,
I mean, granted that you're only looking at 2-year window, but it's like once those teams leave, I mean, this is still regional. It's still regional, regardless of conference. It's still going to be a regional battle. I mean, Texas and Texas A&M fans, students, alumni, they still hate each other today, even though they don't compete against each other. And it's big in the recruiting landscape. You're going to see that at the next level too. You're going to start looking at, you know, what are TCU, Baylor, what are they going to compete with in terms of both Houston and Texas also? There are just so many ways that you can view this, especially on the recruiting aspect, because when you're a recruit, you're not playing in the college game yet. You're not thinking about playing LSU or if you're going to be playing Oklahoma State. You still have to be fighting with all these other schools, even if it's not on the football field.
yeah. So let's bring up the schedule. We'll put it on the screen here. What were your biggest takeaways when you first looked at it?
I mean, I really hate to sound like a broken record, but how about TCU going to Houston for essentially what's going to be the Big 12 opener in week 3? I mean, that's going to be big for the people here on campus at U of H. It's going to be big for the school. My biggest concern with Houston, even going into this, was were they ready to compete in the Big 12? Because they went 0-2 against 2 teams that finished at the bottom of the Big 12 in 2021 this past season. That was always a concern. But I'm assuming that this is going to be a primetime game when this game is being played. It's going to be big for the campus. It's going to be big for TCU too, because TCU, they're only starting off against Colorado and Nicholas State. I mean, no disrespect to Deion Sanders and his crew, but they're not going to come out and be, Pac-12 champions week 1 either. So this is going to be TCU getting back in the groove of things, seeing, how's Max Duggan going to do without Quentin Johnson and, Kendra Miller. We're going to get a good idea of what TCU looks like. And something that was very interesting, I didn't really notice it until Josh Pate brought it up. But think about TCU schedule to end the year. They have to go to BYU and Provo, and then they have to end the season against the not current Big 12 champs, but the national title runners up and TCU on a short week. We don't know what Oklahoma is going to look like. I don't think Oklahoma is going to go back to being the Big 12 champion that we've always known for the last 5 years. I don't know how they're going to struggle. I don't know what we're going to get, but to go from Provo to playing the number 2 team in the country it honestly makes you wonder, like, that is brutal to start off for to end the season for Oklahoma.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're the beginning of the schedule is pretty soft.
It's cake.
For me, my biggest take was Oklahoma State. I mean, the Big 12, the committee, they kind of just that. I'm looking for their marquee games. If you look at it, Kansas State, who knows, right? They're granted they're the Big 12 champs, but who knows what will happen with that program? They don't play Texas. There's no Baylor. There's no Tech. What other than Houston and maybe BYU at the end of the year? Who knows? Who knows if that's a marquee game towards the end of the year? I don't see any marquee games on this.
There's no big game for Oklahoma State. And something that I was going to bring up for Oklahoma State is that after their bowl loss to Wisconsin, it felt like they had an absolute plethora of transfers leaving Stillwater. And you didn't really see any players go to Oklahoma State after that happened. So now it really makes me wonder what's going to be the talent level at Oklahoma State. That was a team that started off red hot to start the season. They finished 7-5. They only won one game in their last 6 games, I think, if I remember correctly. That's just a program that, like, you just remember them seeing the Fiesta Bowl in 2021, and now it's like you're going into 2023, and I don't know how good Cincinnati is going to be. I don't know if Oklahoma is going to be back, but at the same time, they got 2 of those 3 games. They have to end them again at Orlando, at Houston, and then you have to play BYU. And BYU is always a dangerous team. They always know how to put up score numbers on the scoreboard. I don't even like Oklahoma State for the season, even though they're not playing Texas. I don't really think it matters, because then you look at South Alabama, who was one of the most underrated teams in 2022. I am not even saying that Oklahoma State's going to win that game with ease. They still have to go to Arizona to play Arizona State. Arizona State's obviously been a dumpster fire, but if Oklahoma State's already going on a downward spiral, we don't even know who their quarterback is going to be next year, because Spencer Sanders, he's out at Ole Miss now. There's nothing with Oklahoma State that's like, you don't have a good enough schedule to be impressive, but at the same time, you don't have a good enough team for anyone to have confidence in you going into 2023.
Yeah, I agree. So out of the new 4 teams, who would you say has the easiest schedule? For me, I think it's easily Cincinnati. They don't have Texas. They don't have Tech.
They get Oklahoma out of the way early,
and they get them at home as well.
That's true. You get Oklahoma at home. I don't have confidence for Baylor going into the season. I think you're absolutely right about Cincinnati. I think they host UCF. They still have to go to U of H. Then you end the season at Morgantown in West Virginia, and then you end it at home against Kansas. You don't get Texas. You're essentially getting an unknown Oklahoma. They don't get TCU either. Either. That's big. That's massive. And they don't even get Kansas State. So Cincinnati does not get the 2 Cincinnati does not get the 2 Big 12 reps in the championship game last season. They also do not get Texas. What are we going to get a Cincinnati in the Big 12 championship game already going next season? I mean, a lot of these players are still Luke Fickell's guys. So, So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, Cincinnati obviously did not want that Fenway Bowl to end the way that it did, but this is a cupcake schedule for Cincinnati. We literally just got done talking about Oklahoma State. I'm starting to feel like Cincinnati is still in the AAC.
So it feels like that's exactly what I was thinking. And then on the other side, I think Houston's schedule is brutal.
It's brutal. And also, I really want to say this. I mean, we'll talk about this for a second, but this is big for the university to get into the Big 12. I am nowhere near denying that. But think about all the players that Houston just lost after this season. You lose Tank Dell, you lose Clayton Tune, you're losing Donovan Newton, you lost Anthony Jones, you lost Derek Parrish. You lost Elias Bell. You lost Javarius Owens, Donnie Mune, if I haven't said it already, Art Green. All these guys are going to the NFL draft. Shout out our guy Dylan for making all those guys graphics. But like Houston, it's like I love Donovan Smith. I loved him when he was at Tech, and I think he's a huge get for Houston. But if he's going to be staying past 2023, which I assume he will be, and he'll be back in 2024, 2023 is not going to be the season that you're going to be banking on Houston to come out against, a lot of these Big 12 teams. They host Texas this year on the 21st of October. You have to go to Manhattan to play Kansas State. You have to go to Waco. You have to face Cincinnati at home, which Cincinnati's had Houston number for a couple of years now. You have to go to Lubbock again, and you know it every bit as I do. Houston does not do well against Texas Tech, especially in Lubbock. That is not a game that I want to look forward to. I am honestly looking at the schedule right now, and I am capping it at 6 wins for them this season.
So let's do biggest winners and losers. What do you think overall?
As in, like, who's got the biggest loser and who's got the biggest winner in terms of like their schedule laid out?
The scheduling, just how they ended the end of the year really easily.
Ooh, that's a good one. Ooh, man, I haven't thought about this far, but I think we kind of said it. I think Cincinnati, if you're looking at Cincinnati's schedule right now, I think you have a real shot at 9-3 in your first season in the Power 5. I think that's big for them. Even if they don't make a Big 12 title game, they have a really nice schedule laid out for them. They still have to go to Pitt, but that's out of conference. That's not going to count against them as they try to get to Arlington. It's funny enough, we're not really talking about UCF that much. UCF, I mean, we're still trying to figure out what is Gus Malzahn's role at UCF now. I mean, we don't know how good they're going to be. They still have to go to Manhattan to play Kansas State. They have to play 3 road games in 4 weeks at Kansas State, then Kansas, then Oklahoma, all on the road. They have to go to Cincinnati on the road. They have to go to Lubbock on the road at Texas Tech. I think UCF has got a big wild card here. I mean, they do end the season at Houston. TCU, I think it's really interesting. They got to play at Houston week 3. They have to go play at home against SMU. I think Cincinnati's my biggest winner, and I think in terms of loser, we just said it. Houston's schedule it's damn near a death trap for Houston going into this season with that schedule. I mean, they're going to sell tickets. That's for sure. And they've struggled getting tickets sold at the door for Houston. This will get people in, but unfortunately, I think they're going to be wearing other teams' colors inside TDCU.
So for me, I'll go my biggest loser, I think, is TCU. I think Houston's schedule is tough. I think TCU's is just as tough, but I think Houston lost a lot, right? So we really didn't expect them to compete, at least not this year. I think TCU, after having success, they're building something. I think the end of their schedule after their bye week, they have to go to Tech, and then they have Texas, Baylor, then they go to Oklahoma. I think that is brutal.
That is
in the Big 12. They have to go to Houston, to Iowa State, playing in Ames. It's never easy. BYU.
You never know. You never know about that SMU game either.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this schedule, Colorado. I think they beat Colorado. I agree, but can they win all these games? Yes, but I think we see it again where last year they kind of. I'm not gonna say they got lucky, but they escaped a lot of.
They played a lot of games a lot closer than what they needed to.
Yeah, I don't know if they can do that again.
Biggest examples for them. TCU, I think TCU is a wild card because I think a lot of people are gonna probably be behind the Max Duggan train after his season, but I think he loses his top 2 wide receivers. He loses his leading running back this past season. That defense was atrocious this past year. Also, that for as good as that offense was, they had to cover up so much of their defense's faults. And at the end of the day, Georgia just exposed them. And at the end of the season, they're probably looking for their Gary Patterson receipt that they gave to Texas, to be honest with you. But I mean, I think TCU is going to be a huge wild card win this year. I think a lot of people are going to be banking on them to make Big 12 title game again, but based on that schedule and based on the amount of talent that they lost, top tier talent, I'm not saying that they're going to be disappointing. I'm not going to say that, but I'm just saying, like, don't get your hopes up, because I ain't going to say the BACK word, but Texas does have a lot of weaponry going into this season too.
Yep. And it's funny you mentioned Texas, because that is, I think, by far the biggest winner. For one, they end the season with Iowa State at home and then versus Tech. I think those are two very winnable games. They only leave the state of Texas twice, Alabama at the start and then Iowa State. That's the only time they leave the state of Texas. So
what the hell? I didn't even notice that.
A lot of home games and virtual home games.
And those Texas fans, they're going to travel no matter where the game is.
Exactly. They avoid Oklahoma State, who has just been a thorn in their side.
You don't go to Provo. That's
don't go
big.
to Provo. Their road games are Houston, which is probably going to be a home game, unfortunately. Baylor, which they get Baylor early. I think that's a plus. And then that TCU game is going to be tough.
TCU is tough, and that's at Fort Worth.
Yes, and that's going to be late.
But and
other than
that could be a key factor in deciding like who's going to make that Big 12 title game.
Yeah.
And I still like Texas. I mean, I think a lot of people are giving Quinn Ewers some smack, I guess, because they probably thought that he didn't play as well towards the end of the season as what a lot of people hope so. But honestly, he had to play through an injured collarbone through most of that season. You got to give him that. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jaden Blue, I don't think he entered the transfer portal, did he?
He did not. He is still there. He's ready to go.
And for those that don't know, Jaden Blue, he probably hasn't played organized football in like 3 years because he had to skip his senior. Well, he didn't have to, but he skipped his senior year when he was at Klein Cain, same high school as Matthew Golden. But he's good. I've seen him play. He's good, and I think he's finally getting his shot going into this season.
So you have Texas in the Big 12 championship?
I think so. I think if you look at the overall, that's going to be hard. I don't think Kansas State makes it back because losing Deuce Vaughn is a lot for them. The weird thing about the Big 12 is teams always pop out when you least expect them.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Can we go bold?
Why not?
Cincinnati goes to the Big 12 title game.
Cincinnati.
Why not? I mean, look, Luke Fickell is on the right side of town now, up in Wisconsin now, but that's still a lot of good players that he left behind in Cincinnati. I think it's going to be a new coaching staff that's probably going to take familiarization. But you know what? Guess what? Sonny Dykes made it to the Big 12 title game in his first season as TCU coach. Granted, he already knew the area. But I think Cincinnati does have a lot of good talent. And we already said it. They got a super easy schedule. Granted, Texas is going to beat them by 35 in the Big 12 title game. But I still like Cincinnati a lot.
Okay. For me, not being a homer, I think it's Texas. I honestly do. That's just me being an analyst. I think their schedule is very easy. Like I said, they only leave the state twice, one at the start of the year. Baylor on the road. They have Wyoming before that. They can prepare for that game easily. I'm going to go with Texas and Kansas State.
Kansas State goes back.
I think Kansas State goes back again.
And Adrian Martinez has like 1 year of eligibility left, doesn't he?
I think so. I'm not sure. Is Will Howard too?
Will Howard's super good. Like I thought he was really good in the little bit of time that he got.
Yeah, I think either way they'll be fine. I like what they're doing. And I'm just looking at how the schedule plays out. I think having to end it against Kansas and Iowa State at home, I think they're going to get off to a hot start. They have UCF at home, Missouri, Oklahoma State on a Friday, Tech. I think that TCU, Houston, Texas game is going to be tough. They're probably going to drop at least one, probably two of those. But I think 3 wins get you into the Big 12 championship again. So I'm going Kansas State and Texas.
So to end this off, which team going into next season for the Big 12 do you think is going to be the biggest downer, the most disappointing team for 2023?
Oklahoma State. I think they just lost too much. Even though their schedule isn't very hard, I don't
The
that
talent's
program
just
seems,
lost way too much.
yeah.
And they you still got to go to Manhattan at Kansas State. That's never easy. I'm sorry, that game's at home, but Kansas State, they've always won tough games. Last year, the one thing that Oklahoma State does have for them is a lot of their bigger games are at home. But I'm still with you. They still lost way too much. It just feels like nobody likes Mike Gundy anymore. That's honestly the biggest vibe that I'm getting. It feels like people are calling him the biggest prick in college football, or at least in the Big 12. I know what we said about Dana Holgerson. And if we were playing in the AAC one more year, if Houston was playing in the AAC one more year, and if they went 5-7, you'd fire him without even questioning. But if Houston went 5-7 here with a Big 12 schedule, it would be disappointing to miss the bowl game. But given the level of competition that just stood up, I'd assume you'd have to give him one more year.
I think you have to make a bowl game, right? Like, you have to.
You have to. I mean, there's just
you can't lose a Tech again. You can't lose a Tech 3 straight times.
The stupid thing about it is that the game is in Lubbock for a second straight season. And the only reason why that is because they weren't considered conference opponents last year. That is where I think the Big 12 got the schedule wrong, in my honest opinion. But aside from U of H, I mean, listen, if you just made a bowl game, I think that would be more success. But I think Texas Tech, I think they take a dip too. I still like Joe McGuire, but I still think they lose a lot of talent going into next season. There's no Donovan Smith. It was Tyree Wilson. He's going to the NFL draft now. I think Texas Tech does take a step back. I remember back when you ridiculed me, you, Jake, and Sean J. Raja, all of y'all ridiculed me for saying that Texas Tech was going to make a bowl game. They did, and they won it. But this time I'm going to say they don't make it. And also, I think BYU is going to be in purgatory. I think BYU is just going to be one of those teams that you just forget is even in the Big 12 throughout the season.
Yeah.
All right. Now, who do you think has the best shot to be surprising in the Big 12?
Biggest surprise, Oklahoma. I wouldn't call it a surprise, but they had a down year. I can't see that program just being bad again. I think Dylan Gerber was a good quarterback. He got hurt. That Texas game, that leaves a very sour taste in their mouths. They know that who they are. They can't do that again. I think they're going to surprise people. It wouldn't surprise me if they were in the Big 12 championship. It really wouldn't.
I'm shocked that they're playing at Tulsa. That just does not make any sense. Why would Oklahoma be playing a road game at Tulsa?
I don't know.
But listen, they still got to go to the road at Cincinnati. You still got Texas, obviously, in Dallas every year. You have to go to Lawrence, which I honestly think Kansas is another team that I think takes a step back. I don't think they'll make they got to come down to earth, right? I mean, that's got to be right, right? Kansas just has to go back to where we're used to seeing them.
I think they're still going to be. I think it's still going to be a tough out. It was probably they won 5 or 6 games again. I think they can be undefeated heading into BYU. I think they can beat BYU at home. It wasn't surprising they were 4-0 going into that Texas game. Well, they could be. They might not be, but I wouldn't be shocked, I would say.
So I already said Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati is going to be good. I mean, they are going to lose some talent, but I don't think they're going to lose every single vital piece that they had the year before. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Any last takeaways you want to put out there before we officially close this out?
Let's get some new rivalries. I feel like there's no real rivalries other than Texas, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. I need some hatred.
What's a rivalry you want to see come up?
I would love for UH Texas to be like a rivalry game. I think the animosity is already built up there for that one.
That's true. I mean, let's be honest, we're both going to be at that game on the 21st of October. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some fights outside in the parking lot, to be honest. Because like, let's just be honest. I mean, people don't think about it, but once you go into the business world, UT Austin and alumni, they don't exactly get the most along. So I truly can't blame it too much. It's going to be interesting. I'd like to see what UH's relationship is going to be with the rest of the Texas teams. That's what I'm interested about, because this is the first time Houston's in the same conference as these Texas teams since they left the Southwest Conference all the way back in 1996. The last time they played together was in 95. It's good to know that we're going to get some good old-fashioned Texas style back. And it's called, and last thing, it's an old rivalry, but a bit of new energy. I want to see how Bedlam plays out over these next 2 seasons, because we've already heard Oklahoma State's AD come out and say that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State is not going to be a rivalry anymore after Oklahoma leaves for the SEC. So how much more bad blood is that going to happen?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited. I'm ready, man. So we're gonna continue to pump out this Big 12 content. I'm excited. You got anything final words?
Nope, that's it for me.
All right. We'll see you next time on the Transfer Portal. It's out.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe.